channel.
What's that?
What's your YouTube channel?
Just ran into some drunk Scottish guys. They asked me what my YouTube was, so I just told them. Boom shadang, check it out. If you have the X100F, then you know how of an amazing camera it is, but when it comes to vlogging, it kinda sucks. It's one of the biggest hurdles that I've had in starting up my YouTube channel. In fact, I found myself vlogging a lot less often as I would have liked, just because of how inconvenient that whole setup was. Wow, Edinburgh is loud during the Fringe Festival. I am taking you guys to the woods where it's a lot quieter here. So I know the X100F was not built with vlogging in mind. But you know what, I was really hoping that I could get this little guy so that I could downsize and carry around as little equipment as possible. And creatively, I really did want to challenge myself to use my X100F exclusively for everything: portraits, landscapes, video, and that includes vlogging. So after about a year or so of attempting to vlog on this thing, I've hit what I like to call the threshold of inconvenience. And what I mean by that is there are enough annoying things that you keep on running into when you're trying to do a particular thing, in this case vlogging, that it starts to become a bit of a problem. So then the question becomes, is it worth it for me to invest in a new piece of equipment that would actually help me to solve the problem and do the thing that I want to do even better? And that new piece of equipment for me is the Canon M50. So first things first, it is all about the flip screen, because it just makes vlogging an absolute joy. For vlogging, having a flip screen is a personal revolution. It just opens up so many more creative possibilities, allows me to do these short takes a lot more often and keep visual interest high in these videos that I produce for you guys. Now before, I would spend so much time framing the shot, and that would include mounting my external monitor to the top of my X100F, and then attaching the battery and the cable, and if you forget even just one of these things, then basically you're screwed. And now when I want to vlog, I just flip the screen, I hit record, and I am ready to go. In fact, I would say that I was kind of embarrassed to be seen in public with a camera with a flip screen, and I just thought, okay, I don't need one of these things anyway, right? Now, as you can see, I am vlogging now in public because I just don't give a So the M50's flip screen also happens to be a touchscreen, which is really cool because it means that you can control almost everything from the front of the camera without having to reach to the controls on the back, which is a huge time saver. Now this is a small thing and you would think it's an obvious thing, but on the M50 you have a counter that goes upwards in time rather than backwards in time. So right now I'm looking at my screen and I know that I've gone on for 12 seconds. Whereas on my X100F it would count down, so I had no idea how much time I had been blabbering on and on for. And if you want to do a take that only limits yourself to a certain amount of time, then this is really helpful. So autofocus on the M50 is really good. It's a huge improvement over the X100 because of the dual pixel feature that Canon has on all of its cameras, and it's featured on the M50, which is really awesome. So this is an autofocus test. I put the 22mm f2 lens on my M50, and this essentially makes it the equivalent of what we got in the fixed lens on the X100F. So we've got the same focal length. I set these to f2 as well as 1/3200th of a second. I just want to see how well the M50 does. This is pretty predictable because I can see how well the camera's tracking me from left to right, as well as when I move forward and backward, and just testing my planking skills as well. And on the X100F, I know for sure, just from my own experience, that you really have to be dead center in order for the autofocus to work really well. And I know that I am not in focus when I do this and when I do that. So the vast majority of the lenses in the Canon M system have this cool feature called STM. So that means when the autofocus is doing its thing, it means that the focus changes go more slowly. So as you see, as I'm moving in closer to the lens and I'm moving further away, it happens a bit more organically, whereas on the X100F, you know, if I move sort of, you know, at a normal pace, it does an okay job. And if I move pretty quickly back and forth, you'll see, especially if you pay attention to the beach in the background there, you'll see the changes in the focus. They happen a lot more suddenly and quickly, and it has more of a robotic feel to them. So all the more advantage to be using the M50 for video, particularly if you're filming yourself talking to camera. Now, of course, in a normal situation, you would never be moving that quickly back and forth between the lens and yourself. There are times and situations when you're doing handheld, like I'm doing right now, and you know, you're walking around, and the distance will change organically between you and the lens. And so this is where the STM feature really starts to come in handy. The audio preamp on this thing, I heard about it, and I didn't really quite believe it until I started using it myself, but the preamp on the M50 is so much louder than on the X100F specifically, and I think on a few other Fuji cameras. And I didn't think so much of it until I started editing the footage, and I realized, oh, this is saving me time in post because I don't have to mess with the levels. So to do the audio test, I've decided to take things to the beach where it's a lot quieter. I'm going to attempt to also speak at the same volume, give or take, so you can start to hear the difference between the M50 and the X100F. So now you can hear the difference between the audio. I'm pretty sure this is a lot softer. Now this is a little thing, but it's the little things that add up to make a big difference, and that is the M50 has a 3.5mm microphone jack, which means that I can use, finally, the native cable that shipped with my Rode Video Micro, rather than having to use some sort of special cable or an adapter, because the X100F has a 2.5mm microphone jack, and it just eliminates another inconvenience, which is awesome. The only thing that I miss is having physical controls that you have on most Fuji cameras. So if you want to change aperture or shutter speed, you know which dial does what and you can do it immediately. Whereas on a touchscreen, it can take a few taps in order to get there. So one thing I've noticed in just shooting footage casually, particularly using the 22mm lens on the M50, is that the footage coming out of the X100F actually looks just a little bit sharper, and the bokeh is a little bit blurrier. My guess is that it comes down to the larger sensor on the X100F, because APS-C sensors on Fuji cameras are actually 32mm larger in terms of surface size. It may not seem like it makes a huge difference, but seeing it in practice, you actually see that it does have an effect on the bokeh. If you take a closer look at that very same footage, you'll see on the X100F how the cabinet, particularly in the mid-tones, looks really nice and creamy and smooth. Whereas on the M50, you'll see a bit of that flickery, noisy thing going on. And this, again, comes down to the smaller sensor. At least I'm guessing that's what it comes down to. I do miss having the ability to change the mood of a shot simply by choosing a different film simulation. Now I know on Canon cameras you do have picture profiles, but to me it's just not the same thing. They don't have the same kind of cinematic, emotional quality to them. And this might be a little bit superficial, but at the end of the day, the X100F is just a better looking camera. I just enjoy picking it up a lot more, I enjoy using it a lot more, I enjoy just interacting with it because of how beautiful it is. So if you want to follow my journey with either of these cameras, then make sure you subscribe. You can also watch my full review of the X100F talking about my year-long experience with this beautiful little camera and how and why I made the switch from a big Canon DSLR to the X100F. Oh God, all these mosquitoes. Better get out of here before I get eaten alive, my God.